Technology. The average adult is awake for 15 hours and 45 minutes every day, and 45% of that time is spent using a proliferation of technology. That statistic is for an adult. How long do you think an average student spends on technology a day? Probably more than that, right? Let's run down what the first hour of a day for a student looks like. Waking up to the alarm set on your phone, checking the weather to determine what to wear, and then on your way to class, plugging in those Bluetooth earphones cause you ain't got a headphone jack no more. Going on Spotify playing Black Bear's dank new album as you walk to your first class of the day. 80% of that first hour is spent using some sort of technology, and it doesn't end there. Technology is also being used in the classroom as well. So the real question is technology doing more harm than good for students both mentally and physically? We'll get to that. Letters once sent through the Pony Express are now sent with a single click of a button on the World Wide Web. With the introduction of computers and smartphones, communication and accessing data has become an effortless task. Words and messages are exchanged in milliseconds across the globe, and the access of information is endless. However, technology does have the potential to harm society through the isolation of people and through the lack of privacy on the web. Sharing this belief, Sven Bergerts, who is an American essayist, is best known for his claims that the implementation of technology into society will essentially bring the end of the written word. He argues that similar to how written language has replaced oral culture, the transition to the digital age will cause overwhelming societal and cultural effects. With digital replacing physical text, the destruction of language is inevitable. The complexity and distinctiveness of spoken and written expression, which are deeply bound to traditions of print literacy, are being replaced by a more telegraphic sort of plainspeak. Plainspeak, which consists of lower-level words and acronyms, are being used more and more often in basic communication, resulting in the diminishing use and knowledge of complex vocabulary. However, people like John McWhorter think otherwise.
Lol is being used in a very particular way. It's a marker of empathy. It's a marker of accommodation. We linguists call things like that pragmatic particles. Any spoken language that's used by real people has them. If you happen to speak Japanese, think about that little word ne that you use at the end of a lot of sentences. If you listen to the way black youth today speak, think about the use of the word yo. Whole dissertations could be written about it, and probably are being written about it. A pragmatic particle, that's what lol has gradually become. It's a way of using the language between actual people.
Although students are now able to read books and textbooks through a device, we lose the ability to engage with these texts on a physical level. This loss of touch leads to the flattening of historical perspectives, which is another one of the morbid symptoms Bergerts claims that the transition to technology will have on society.
I think from a traditional book you get to hold the real book in your hands, you get to see the pages. I think it's far more of an enjoyable experience. And so for me, yeah, traditional books every time.
I can certainly see the use of ebooks, particularly for sort of technical manuals if you're travelling or something. But yeah, I don't really see the appeal of them for leisure.
Obviously, I'm a young person, so for me, it's better to buy books from the charity shop. But also at the moment, I'm about to go travelling, so obviously a Kindle will be really useful for that.
I prefer traditional books. I like the feel of them. I like the smell of them. Yeah, I just like books, but I wouldn't be against reading an e-book. I just haven't got around to it yet.
As society is entering the process of social collectivization, it is furthering the idea of computer communism. Today's social activities are collected together mainly on Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, and Instagram, where numbers depict one's popularity in effigy. Zadie Smith shares a similar stance towards the claim that the idea of an isolated individual will disappear and that people's lives will be taken over by social media. She argues that when a human being becomes a set of data on a website like Facebook, he or she is reduced. Everything shrinks: individual character, friendships, language, sensibility. Essentially, people are letting these numbers identify who they are, creating a mask over the person's true self.
Our little devices, those little devices in our pockets, are so psychologically powerful that they don't only change what we do, they change who we are.
This then leads to a larger problem for students that concerns many psychologists today, which is the identity crisis. These psychologists believe that students are largely influenced by what is posted by other people on their profiles, where the habits that students learn are decided more by what their friends do and less by the teachings of parents or professors. However, there are others who argue that social media has actually helped create and maintain interpersonal connections between students. Researchers have shown that social media sites like Facebook have the ability to guide students entering an unfamiliar social environment. While technology can be a tool used to access information and communicate, it can also become like a drug, addicting and harmful. As easily as it can further an individual's sense of identity and self-discovery, technology, when abused and uncontrolled, can result in unfavorable consequences that have dreadful effects on an individual's mental and emotional being. To fully and properly take advantage of the opportunities that technology offers, people must be able to take control and use it as an instrument of humanity and liberation rather than a tool for destruction and oppression. Technology, when used correctly, can help solve real-world problems such as poverty, homelessness, and countless other issues that will put humanity on a forward and constructive course.